We continue with our Discernment of Spirits Mondays, and now we're going to begin to talk about rule number 8. And if we were to put a title to this rule, it would be Rule 8, A Time for Patience. And so let me go ahead and read you the rule. This one's a little bit shorter, I think. 8th rule. The 8th. Let one who is in desolation work to be in patience, which is contrary to the vexations which come to him. And let him think that he will soon be consoled, diligently using the means against such desolation, as is said in the 6th rule. There's kind of maybe two elements to this 8th rule. First, there's Ignatius invites people to work at something, right, and then to think a certain way. And so he says that a person in desolation should work to be in patience, right? This is the work that he's inviting people to do in this rule. And then to think, right, that he will soon be consoled. And then he links that to Rule 6. Rule 6 was desolation, a time for initiative, right? Things we can do to fight back. And so he links a way of thinking that you will soon be consoled, and also kind of linking it to fighting it. So let me just kind of cover the first part of this rule, this working at being patient. So we could say perhaps that the key virtue when we're experiencing spiritual desolation is patience. Patience. And just by the language that Ignatius uses, is that patience requires like certain action, right? Working at being patient. It actually takes effort. It's a sense of a decision to just persevere in the midst of a trial, in the midst of desolation. Kind of decide to just press on. Maybe an image that kind of is analogous to this, maybe you could think of a marathon runner, right? I've never run a marathon. I tried to do a half and didn't go too well. But anyway, they talk about when you're getting kind of closer to the end, there's part of the race they call it the wall, which is when you just like you stop enjoying the race and just have to just keep putting one foot in front of the other and kind of pass that part. And then apparently, I think towards the very end, it actually gets better again. But there's this little couple miles that they call the wall, and that you just have to just keep going if you want to finish the race. You have to persevere, right? And so when we're in desolation sometimes, one of the things we have to do is just persevere, to have patience, to kind of the work of just taking up our cross and following and the Lord. And in this, right, it's always this time when we have to kind of do this thing of just working at being patient. It's such an opportunity of growing in the virtues of faith, kind of St. Thomas, right? Faith, hope, and charity, right? It's kind of through this difficulty, there really is a lot of spiritual growth, kind of doing this grit. And so it's a good opportunity. I want to finish kind of just this first part of the rule, just by reading to you a quote that Father Gallagher puts in here from this woman whose name is Elizabeth. She lived in the early 1900s. She was a married woman, a woman of deep faith and prayer, and she writes in her own kind of journal an experience of spiritual desolation and of kind of living patience in the midst of that. She says, "Cowardice, weakness, awkwardness in my demeanor with others, things that can harm the ideas I cherish, acute physical suffering, and deep moral suffering. In the midst of this, I will unshakably turn to God, a plenitude of confidence in Him and love for Him. Daily duties performed at whatever cost by great effort, without fervor, but still performed. Then, little by little, calm returning to me, and divine strength penetrating me again, new and energetic resolutions, the hope that God will help me to do my duty, all my duty. That is the tale of these last weeks and of my soul during this time. I think it's just such a beautiful kind of seeing the heart of this woman, right, who's really going through both kind of non-spiritual desolation, right, with physical ailments, but also deep moral suffering, right, so spiritual desolation, and yet this sense of like persevering through the grit, right. I love this thing, like doing my daily duties with great effort, without fervor, but still doing them. And then the result that yields from this is that kind of desolation passes, right? She perseveres, little by little, calm returning to me, etc., right? She perseveres, and she's on the other side and back to consolation. So key virtue for desolation is patience. We'll continue with the other half of Rule 8 next week.